Hi, Books in Action here. I'm once again with Linda West Eckhardt, author of 18 cookbooks, podcast on Please Don't Talk With Your Mouth Full. But she's not just done cookbook writing; she's done other writing. So we're going to talk about writing in general. You wrote Lone Star and wrote a screenplay treatment of it. What was that like? What was it like going from writing a fiction, a work of fiction, and then what is involved in then making it a screenplay? How is it different?
Well, a screenplay is very rigid. You know, the form is very... In fact, I'm working on one right now as a script doctor, helping a friend of mine get an ending for a book that, a movie that's going to go into production in 3 weeks, and we have to add a little something at the end. So, it's a more rigid form, screenwriting is. It's really not my métier any more than television is. It's its own thing.
How do you make the choices? A book is a book and can have so much more. How do you, or do you just fly by the seat of your pants, make the choices of what's important and what you're going to have to leave out in a screenplay?
Well, a screenplay is driven largely by time. You know, you have to figure out. And of course, a script is like 10% of what makes a movie. So, you know, you just have to realize, it's like a friend of mine who is a reporter for the LA Times, who's worked as a scriptwriter for 20 years. He said, love the work, hate the people. So, because it's such a collaborative process, and it's sort of like giving up your pig you've raised into offering it up to be made into sausage, you know, just not something you really want to watch.
A little gruesome in your analogy there.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the blunt truth, though. You know. So, I mean, I don't really work at that end. What I really am more interested in is creating stories and saying what I have to say. And I mean, I started out in journalism and worked for 10 years without ever having had one course in writing. And when I was 40, I decided maybe I should learn my craft. That might be a plan. So I enrolled at San Francisco State College, it was then, it wasn't university then, and got a master's degree in creative writing, and wrote and published some stories, and wrote the one novel, and I really loved it, but I had to make money, so I just went back to what I could do well and make a living at, which was writing cookbooks.
And now you've combined the two. You have you're working on a fiction, a mystery.
I've written. Well, I'm getting ready to start the second one. The first one is done, and it's turned in, and it's called Indigestion, and it's an examination of what television food world has done to our business. Which, you know, I mean, it's funny and sad and horrible and true and ghastly and hilarious and so I've done that book, and so the next one, which I'm getting ready to start, is called Corruption, and I'm going to take on the big-time chefs in that book and have a contest it's going to be set at the Aspen Food and Wine Festival, because it's what a crazy world. I mean, it's really funny. So, but it's a wonderful opportunity to do. I'd love to do it. I really enjoy the process, but it's hard. Hard work.
So what do you do? Since this is what you do, you are a writer. That's what you do.
Yeah, that's right.
You do other things, but that's basically your bread and butter, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what is your day like?
Well, I'll tell you what I learned when I went to graduate school, and I'd already been a working journalist for 10 years, and I had a teacher there named Leo Litwack, who was from the University of Chicago, and he said to me, you know, you're very disrespectful of your talent. He said, you're lazy, you're slovenly, and you don't want to work. And he said, if you want to get ahead in this world and do with your talent what should be done, you're going to have to start being more respectful of yourself. He said, stop going to lunch with women. Get up and give the best part of your day, whatever that is, to your writing life, and don't answer the phone. And I always love what Judith Krantz said. She's a sister of a publisher I had in California, and she used to have a sign on her door in LA that said, if this door is closed, do not come in. Do not knock on this door. If the house is on fire, use the phone in the kitchen. Do not disturb if this door is closed. And that's really what you have to do. You have to put it first in your life, which is what I've done now for 20 plus years. Very happily, I might say. It's much more rewarding than going to lunch with people.
Well, in the end it is. At least you have something to show for it afterwards.
No, it's the process itself is so rewarding.
Well, let's talk about that. So how long typically, a work of fiction, how long does it take you to write?
Well, I don't know that I can answer that. I try to write one book a year, no matter whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And so I'm hoping that I can hold it to 1 year. May or may not be possible, but that's to make a living, you really need to write a project once a year. That's what it takes. And
so once you've gone through the whole process, that's over, you're really on to your next one. It now has a life separate and apart from you.
That's exactly right. And actually, no matter what kind of project I'm working on, there are different projects in different stages. And so you can work on 2 or 3 projects at once that are in different stages. Like right now, I'm in the stage of, I always think of it like making stew. You know, I'm in the process now where I've gathered the potatoes and the carrots and the onions, and I've started the water to boil, and I've put a little bacon in the pan, and I'm cutting up the potatoes, and I'm going to just kind of cook this thing. And then eventually, when the book really takes hold and really begins to get a life of its own, everything in your day reminds you of something in the book. It's a very weird thing because you feel like the whole world is there for you because everything comes to your book.
Now, have you had an opportunity to have a character live beyond one book?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've already been told by the editor that the protagonists in this book called the first book, the fiction that I've done in this series, that we're going to do another book with the same characters, definitely, because they're worthwhile.
Right.
Yeah, they are.
So that's going to be a new experience for you.
Yeah.
Do you look forward to it?
Oh, sure. Because in some ways I see life through their eyes. But actually, you know what's really more fun to write than the protagonists? What's really more fun are the antagonists. You know, the bad guys are so much fun to write. The people who are really doing the dirty deeds and the ones who are full of hubris and vanity and have no redeeming features, they're a lot more fun to write, more fun to think about.
So unlike other people, you don't feel the need to find a redeeming feature in a bad guy. You just want to enjoy their badness.
Well, sometimes they're so bad they're good.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, everybody has redeeming features. And the thing is, what the real challenge is to, like I have a character in this book I've just written who is so awful, but in the end you end up rooting for him, you know. But I mean, he's just unconscious. He has no idea what a jerk he is. But in the end you say, you know, he's not so bad. Well, I hope people say that anyway.
I'm a readaholic.
Yeah.
I love to read.
Yeah.
And for me, for any character, even if they're just in there quickly, I don't really care about good or bad or whatever. I want to see an arc, like a development.
Yeah,
like somehow there's growth in their character for whatever, even if they're growing to be more bad, but there's an evolution, I guess.
Right.
You know, otherwise it's like, why bother?
I know. Well, it's true. You know what Chekhov said? If you put a pistol on the table in Act 1, you have to fire it before the play is over. And so it's really true with writing. And actually, I don't limit this to fiction, by the way. But a large part of the task is selection. What can you take out and it does no harm? I mean, there are putter-inners and taker-outers. And I'm a taker-outer. I mean, for years I've done this really deliberately. I've given editors material that I knew they would not let me keep in the book because I always figured it's better to push the envelope and let the editor tell me when, like say, we cannot have that. The people in Des Moines will not let you say things like that. I say, well, it's your decision. I would say it, but so you know that. But there are other people who create a skeleton and an outline, and then they flesh it out. I do the opposite.
But let me ask you about what you just said. There are people in Des Moines who won't let you say that. So, aside from whether a sentence or a paragraph or a chapter is working or a storyline is working, editors take into consideration.
Hello, it's the real world. Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
Do you think that people are, in our current climate, that editors are more conscious of that than ever?
Well, you know, we're in a really unfortunate, in fact, I was writing an email today to a friend of mine who's a painter, and she was telling me about something awful that had happened to one of her projects. And we're living in such a humorless world now. You know, things that this painter was saying that 10 years ago he did something where he created a limerick to go with his painting, and somebody took it just dead on serious and wouldn't let him print it. And I wrote him back and I said, you know, if you did that today, they'd probably put you in prison for sedition. You know, we're in a very humorless time. I mean, the whole thing of PC has just made it very difficult to live, and difficult to write.
You know, they say the pendulum swings one way and then goes back.
Yeah.
Boy, I hope it starts to swing back soon, because political correctness has...
So boring, isn't it?
Well, it's beyond boring. It's actually become offensive. You know, and it's getting in the way, I think, of real communication, of human beings really being able to communicate with each other. Did you ever read the book The Giver? Well, I can't go into it, but for those of you who read it, you know where I'm going. I'll tell you, like, in private, you know.
Yeah.
But it's about a world where if you took everything out, what would it be? And in the book, everyone sees in black and white because there's no color, because color would be offensive to people. So everything that could possibly, it's like political correctness taken to a whole new...
Well, it's funny you should mention this, because this movie that I'm working at, trying to help figure out the ending to, is Al Cox's new movie, and it's going to be shot in black and white out in Monument Valley, California. And it's very bleak, but it's extremely funny. But it is that, black and white and bleak, like there's nothing left. And his storyline is that there's nothing left but the cell phone. So everybody's on the cell phone all the time.
I don't know. We're very inventive about finding other ways to not deal with each other in face-to-face real. But then we miss the moments, you know, the silly moments. My favorite moments are when, have you ever been, like, you're outside on the street and suddenly there's a downpour and you look at the stranger who you've never met in your life and your eyes connect and you might even exchange a sentence, but for that moment you are experiencing something exactly, you both know what's in each other's minds.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think those kind of connections are really, really cool, where you're really connected on a very deep level, and you totally forget everything else on that.
And you don't even have to exchange words.
No, you can or you can't, but like the eyes go and you know you're both on the same page.
Well, and actually, for an artist of any kind, whether you're a writer or a painter or a poet or a dancer or whatever, you're given gifts every day if you just open up yourself and look. You know, when I was in the middle of this project I just turned in, I was in downtown South Orange one day, and I started listening to books on tape, and I finally decided I had to quit because I couldn't afford the gas. Because I couldn't go home, because I didn't have a tape player in the house. I couldn't go home till the book was done. And so I'm driving around listening to the tail end of this book that I'm going to have to turn back into the Maplewood Library. And all of a sudden I realize I'm in the middle of a shootout down in the creek bed. And I'm stuck, and there's the cops from all over these different towns, and it's some bank robbery that took place 2 or 3 towns away, and they were hauling up robbers out of the creek. You know, there must have been 50 cops. They were going right by my car with the guns drawn. Honey, it went in the book the next day. It went in my book.
The truth is often stranger than fiction.
Well, I always say you can't make that stuff up.
Well, can I tell you, and a lot of things happen in your life where you go, you could never write it because no one would believe it.
This is
We're
true.
going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. This is Books in Action. Linda West Eckhardt, Suzanne Roganci. See you soon.
If you're not helping after-school programs, you're really helping to take them away. After-school programs, wouldn't you rather be helping?
We're back, and we've been having fun on break. Books in Action here. Suzanne Roganci, Linda West Eckhardt. Truth is stranger than fiction, and you just can't. Sometimes you just can't write it because people wouldn't believe it.
I know, and I often say you can't make this stuff up. I mean, people tell, of course, for years working as a journalist, I had the experience that every person who ever worked as a journalist and did interviews has this experience, that as people are telling you things and you're writing it down, you think to yourself, if I published this, A, the person would swear they never said it, and B, their lawyer would call me Monday morning and sue us. Because people just say all kind of stuff. You know, you have to use some judgment about what you print, because people, when they start talking to you, they just tell you all kind of stuff. So.
Well, I have to tell you, in doing these shows on this network and interviewing people, I realize, I don't care who it is, everybody has an interesting story.
Oh, sure.
Everybody's had some experience that is
Absolutely.
really,
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter what you think. And sometimes, like, they're far more dramatic than you could ever, like, you just can't believe it.
I know, it's really true.
So it's.
But you see, that's just being open to life, don't you think?
I do.
I mean, you're the kind of person who pays attention to life, you know, and that's, you live every moment of your life, and that's really important to do.
Well, I just think that, well, you know, I like a good story.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact is, I've had the good fortune of, I bet we all meet really interesting people all the time that we didn't even know that they were as interesting as they are. And I guess somehow, somewhere along the line, I just developed an instinct for it.
Yeah.
And I asked people.
Yeah.
I asked people.
Because people love to tell you their story.
Boy, they're
Woo,
just dying to tell you.
I know,
they just want someone to listen. And boy, the things I've heard.
I know. I have a friend who's from an oral culture, and you know how you or somebody else will say, you know, stop me if I've told you this before. And he always says, look, tell it again. You know, you got to work on that story. Tell it again. Because in an oral culture, that's part of your education, is learning to tell your stories well. And so you're expected to tell them over and over again. So I always tell people to tell me again. You know, I don't care if I've heard it 15 times, because every time you tell a story, you tell it a little differently.
Right, it's continually changing.
And that brings us to the question of truth and facts. What's the difference in truth and facts? Here's my example. To get to truth, you have to write fiction. I really believe that from the bottom of my heart. Because years ago, I was sent by Red Book magazine I was living in Texas, and I was sent to San Antonio to live with a Mexican-American family for their Christmas holiday. That was in the era where they believed that, you know, you could embed yourself with the family and really learn everything there was to learn. So they told me what the story was, what it was supposed to be. So I moved in with this family for Christmas. I learned to make great tamales. We've made tamales in our household every Christmas since. But what I discovered when I got into that up close and personal with that family was it was a family in complete distress. They had moved into a neighborhood. San Antonio then was a very racist place. They had moved into a neighborhood where their children were being mocked on the way to school. They were having a lot of problems with their family life, and I called up the people at Red Book and I said, you know, what are we going to do here? This family's in complete distress. The editor said, you write the story you were sent to write. And so I did, and I wrote a completely factual story about the grandmother and the tamales and the kids making cookies and all that. But the story that was published was a total lie, because to tell the truth about that family, you would have had to write fiction. And that's one reason I've always been drawn to fiction, because that's the only way you can really tell the truth about things. Get, you know, cut all the crap away and really tell the truth.
I think that sometimes facts get in the way of people seeing the truth, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that fiction allows us to, as human beings and as a society, to get to truths that we don't want to. To kill a mockingbird.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Good example.
Now that is something that if you did a factual story, people would be so defensive they couldn't be open to it.
Yeah, and see, I don't know. That's a good example of a story that I'm not sure could pass muster in a publishing house today.
And isn't that a horrible thing?
It is a horrible thing. I mean, that's what I say about us living in this punitive era that we're in.
You know, we did a show previously about cookbooks. I wonder if Julia Childs, who created the industry,
she did create the industry,
who brought cooking to American women,
She did.
could get a show today? Because I don't think,
Oh, I don't
she
think
certainly
you could
didn't
get an
have the
interview.
look.
No,
I don't think so.
No, she was over 50 at the time she started, and you know, her husband went with her, and they carried the pots and pans in the trunk of the car, and he was her photographer, and he drew, and he did it. They worked as a team, and they did everything together. Now, contemporaneously, what you see is I went to Walmart this week, and the parking lot was really full, and out in front was a big rock and roll van with one of those wrappers on it, and it said, "Monique, never trust a skinny cook." So I went in, and sure enough, Monique was signing autographs for her new book. And she's a black comedian who's very beautiful and very fat and really, really very popular. So the line from her book went out the door, and most of the people in line had 2 or 3 books. It was a publisher's dream to have that kind of response. So then I went from there directly to the Goat, where another person I knew had a book signing. Couldn't even draw a crowd. Well, okay, why is this? Because Monique has a celebrity value now because she has the television audience. And she's really got it going on. She knows what she's doing. Her book is exactly right on for her market. But do I consider her a cook? No, ma'am, I do not. But, you know, there you go. She's selling books. So.
What's the difference between what she does and what you consider a cook? Define that.
Well, technique, for one. I mean, I saw her on television, and what she was doing on television, I was just screaming like, "What are you doing?" You know, just, she's not a trained cook. And see, there's a big thing we got going on now about training, and it's not just with cookbooks, it's with all books, because The Devil Wears Prada is a very good example. It's a fantastic movie. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's a fabulous movie. The book was written by a 25-year-old girl who was basically recounting her years, her first job out of college working for Anna Wintour. I read the book. The book was whiny. It was just like this poor little girl who was just so angry because she had to go to work and get up every day, and one that awful, the terrible things they did to her. And the book was really quite mediocre. But it made a fabulous movie because the filmmakers realized Anna Wintour was really the Meryl Streep's part. It was so good. But that's an example of a book that really went someplace, and it had a great story. And even though the novel itself was badly written and had a tone to it that was just really annoying, but there was a great story there.
Well, movies and books are a weird thing because I always think of myself as a backwards person. There's many movies that I've seen that I liked, and I went and read the book, and then certainly I liked the book better.
Yeah, me too.
But they're 2 different experiences.
Yeah, they are.
You know, and some things really, really need to be visual. Some things really work as a movie and not for a book.
Right.
I saw the movie Simon Birch, which was taken from A Prayer for Owen Meany.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just the very beginning of the book. Now, I love the movie. I thought the movie is as sweet as can be. The book, I've told you in our life that it's one of my top 10 favorite books, and the character of Owen Meany is just one of the greatest literary characters of all time. But they did what they could for a movie because they couldn't have done the whole thing.
Well, here's one thing that's fun to do as a reader. And I will say that the best thing that happened to me going to graduate school was that I learned to read. It wasn't that I just learned to write, but I learned to read because I had very good instructors. And if you find something that you like, for example, one of my favorite movies of all time is The English Patient. So I saw The English Patient. I was quite taken with it. So then I backed up and read the novel The English Patient, and I fell in love with Michael Ondaatje. And then I read everything he ever wrote, and I've read maybe 7 or 8 things that he's written, and I really began to get an understanding of who he is and where he's coming from, and it helps me appreciate his books. Another example of that sort of reading is oh God, what is the name of that fantastic movie of the businessman that Jack Nicholson played the part of the guy in Des Moines who's about to retire? And
oh yes, Schwartz.
Yeah.
Something like
about
that.
Schwartz.
About Schwartz.
So About Schwartz is a great movie, but so I wanted to read the book about that. Well, the book is set in New York. It's set in a white shoe law
about Schmidt.
About Schmidt. Set in a white shoe law firm. It's a totally different experience, but I fell in love with the author of that, and so I've read now everything he ever read. But I love to do that, to really read deeply into one author.
Well,
if they have
you read a lot of Colleen McCullough?
No, I don't like thick books. I think thick books need cutting.
Colleen, well, I don't, because I like to be in a book a long time.
I know, you do.
But Colleen McCullough does have short books. She has some very short books.
Really?
She is, now I've read, like, not bragging, I've had to have read 10,000 books or more.
Yeah.
When I find an author, I read
Oh, yeah,
everything,
me
because,
too.
you know, it's great. She's the most diverse author I've ever come across.
Really?
Ever in my life, she's not formulaic. She, in fact, you would think she was a lot of different authors, because she's really, I love her.
Yeah, I should read her. There's so many good things to read in the world.
Now, what are you going to do to stretch yourself? You've done lots of different things. Do you, and you're still doing it, do you feel that you're always stretching yourself?
I wouldn't do it if I weren't. And I read a comment by another author that I had to echo it. I thought, amen. And that is this. They said to him, what is it that gets you going every morning? He said, stark fear. I'm terrified every day. I mean, I am terrified every single day that I can't do what I've said I'm going to do that day, but I do it anyway. You know, I have to do it. I have to push myself and try to do something that's harder and more demanding than I know how to do, because otherwise, why do it?
So, you've got your fiction, your novel. What do you see in your far distant future for yourself?
I just, you know, I want to just keep on typing. I want to write and tell stories and just stack those books up. Make this stack about that high before I'm done.
It would be a good thing.
It would be
What
a good
do you
thing.
have to say to someone out there who thinks they might want to do it?
Who thinks they might want to be a writer?
Yeah.
If you can do anything else in the world, do it, because it's a very hard life. Most writers, including me, don't make a lot of money. I mean, I've had a very rich life, but I've never gotten rich. Whether you make money or not is the lottery when it comes to writing. If you want to make money, go to law school. You know, do not think you're going to get rich and famous as a writer. But if you have to do it, then give yourself over to it, because it's the most rewarding thing in the world.
And so you simply have to do it.
Yeah.
What about training?
Oh, yeah, you should get all the training you can get. Absolutely.
Which seems to apply, you know, I've asked actors, singers, and they all say the same thing, training.
Craft.
You know,
craft. You got to
it.
learn your craft. People who think there's a shortcut to this.
Well, I think greatness comes if you have a gift, but that greatness can only be realized through training.
Well, and you know, I read something 1,000 years ago that said, genius does what it must, talent does what it can, and most of us are just merely talented. You know, we just have to work hard and do it. The geniuses, let them worry about themselves.
And they do.
And they do.
Right. And that's, thank you so much, Miss Linda.
Thank you. It's a
I
pleasure.
hope you all had a good time. And write if you haven't, read if you can. Books in action. See you next time.
That was good. That's fun.
So anyhow.